I'm Vicki Hogarth, and welcome to Southwest Magazine. My guest today is art specialist and president of Cowley Abbott, Rob Cowley, who is currently on a 5-city East Coast art valuation tour, with their last stop being right here in St. Andrews by the Sea. Thank you so much, Rob, for being here today.
Of course, Vicki. It's a pleasure to be here.
Can we talk a little bit about the 10 Commandments of Art Valuation? What are they? And give us a breakdown.
Absolutely. So, there's different factors. A lot of people wonder what the difference is between a painting that could sell for, $1 million and a painting that might sell for $200. So we've put together what we call the 10 Commandments. So 10 factors that contribute to the value of a piece of art at auction, certainly. The first and most important is artist, of course. So an artwork, a good example of that would be an artwork by Tom Thomson, who is one of Canada's most celebrated painters, predated the Group of Seven, was friends with the Group of Seven. His work, we recently sold a painting by him for about $2.4 million. A very small painting, about 8 by 10, a small sketch by him. His brother, George Thomson. Tom Thomson idolized his brother. He was a very fine painter as well. He didn't have the acclaim that Tom Thomson did. And so a painting of the same size would probably sell for about $1,000. Now, these are two brothers, but the artist, of course, makes a huge difference. Subject matter is really important. So what an artist is best known for. So a landscape by Emily Carr is going to fetch more at auction than like a still life, a floral still life. Period's very important. So we often talk about important periods in artists' careers. With Picasso, we often talk about his blue period. With artists like Jean-Paul Riopelle, the early 1950s tend to be very valuable. For Riopelle, a work from the early 50s can sell for millions of dollars, whereas a work from 20 years later could sell for $30,000 or $40,000. The association of an artwork, and that's the history. So if an artwork was included in important exhibitions, or it was from an important collection, if it came from another artist's collection. We once sold an Emily Carr that was owned by a member of the Group of Seven, and that performed very strongly for hundreds of thousands of dollars, and part of it was that history, its association. The size of an artwork is very important. So typically, generally, a smaller painting will sell for less than a larger painting, but we also find now in most recent years, very large paintings can also have a bit, be worth a little bit less because people have less space for them. So very large, sometimes we see 10-foot paintings by well-known artists, but not everybody has space for it. So the bidding competition will often be lighter than a painting by that artist that's going to fit in any kind of home. Conditions, very important. So if the painting has had restoration in the past, or it's just in poor condition overall, then that's going to contribute to its value. Besides that, we also have, finally, is fashion. So what might be in fashion right now? Yeah. So the trends in the art world can contribute to the value of an artwork. A great example of that right now would be Maud Lewis. Since Maudie, the movie, came out in 2016, her market has changed dramatically. Paintings that used to sell for anywhere from $3,000 to $10,000 now regularly exceed $40,000 and $50,000. We have sold works by her for $90,000 since the movie was released. Wow. And so a lot of excitement around her work, very much what's in fashion because of the movie's release. But then on the other side of things, you'll have works that, 19th century, especially watercolors, whereas those used to be central to the market in terms of value, whereas they're not as sought after by collectors anymore. So they carry a more conservative value than they used to.
What's a typical day like for you when you are on a tour like this? What kind of works are people bringing your way?
We see a bit of everything. Anna and I have been, as you said, this is the one of the final stops of the stops in Atlantic Canada. We see oil paintings, we see prints, we see a lot of posters, a lot of prints. I'll go back to prints. A lot of reproductions. So a lot of works of art that are reproductions of well-known paintings. Canada's very interesting. Across Canada, you have such a strong history of settlement from Europe that there's a lot of European artwork as well, and a lot of prints and reproductions of works of art by Irish and English and Scottish artists, because so much settlement happened from those regions to Canada. So when Canadians first started settling, or when individuals first started settling in Canada, the tradition was to collect artwork that depicted where they were from. So you had a lot of international scenes. A lot of them were prints because they were more affordable. And what was of course, what was most exciting about the Group of Seven and their tradition was the fact that we broke from that and started portraying the country we lived in, not where we were from. So we see all kinds of prints like that. Unfortunately, they don't carry much value anymore. And we see sculpture, a lot of posters, and all kinds of things. It's always, we love these days because not only are we, hoping to assist clients who are bringing works of art in, we're also continuing to learn because we tend to see, different kinds of prints and works of art we've never seen before.
I'm picturing it Antiques Roadshow.
Very much. It's very much like the Antiques Roadshow. It's people bringing things in, lots of excitement around it. You're always hoping you have good news for the client. But in many ways, even if you're telling someone that something is maybe worth less than they expected, it can be a help to them because they don't have to worry about insurance, or with everybody downsizing, a lot of people downsizing now, it also is helpful to them because they can give something away or bring it to Goodwill and not have that worry that maybe it's more valuable than they might know.
When you're not on a tour, let's say someone's watching this at home, missed out on the chance to bring something, how do they contact you if they want to get your opinion on the value of something they might have in their home?
So we provide this service remotely at all times. There's no cost or obligation attached to it. It's fully confidential. You can just go to cowleyabbott.ca and you can actually contact us through the Contact Us section. You can send us images of your artwork and we can provide you with a value usually within a couple of days. You can also email us. It's just mail@cowleyabbott.ca. And again, just send us an image of the front and the back of the artwork as well as the size. And then we can at least provide you with something basic, and we'll ask you for more information if we need it. But most of our days, all of our specialists are, a lot of our time is spent responding to emails and providing that service remotely.
I'm sure. And you're going to walk us through some of the artwork that you brought with you today. If someone, let's say, though, is out at an estate sale and is wondering about something as simple as authenticity, which could be a very hard thing for someone who doesn't have your eye to figure out, what are the key things you look for if you're authenticating?
It can be a little bit difficult. It depends on the artist. Certainly, you're trying to recognize, and it can be tough if you don't have a lot of experience with an artist. If the work does appear to be similar in terms of style and palette to the work that the artist is best known for. If you're looking at works even by an artist like Cornelius Krieghoff, who was a 19th century painter, if the canvas is very new, it looks like it was painted yesterday, then it's probably telling you, and it's represented as Krieghoff, there's a good chance it's not by him. The back of an artwork can often tell us as much as the front. So turning it around, if there is exhibition labels, or if there's labels from a well-known gallery, those are often very helpful, and those can help identify if an artwork is by a certain artist or represented as such. We had a case years ago where a client actually found a painting by David Bowie in a landfill. So essentially at a landfill in Northern Ontario, when people would bring things there to be discarded, the people that worked at the landfill would take anything that looked like it might be of interest to people and just lay it aside, literally outside. She came by and saw this small painting, a small portrait, and on the back was a label that actually said David Bowie portrait, and gave the medium description. It didn't mean it was authentic, but certainly that was a great indicator for her. She paid $5 for it. She brought it to us, but then once it arrived with us, we then contacted an individual who was an expert in David Bowie's work. He was able to trace the painting to David Bowie's website. He used to sell paintings through a website during the 1990s, and the painting was there with a photo. So this expert helped us to authenticate it. And then from there, the painting captured headlines internationally, and it actually sold for about $110,000 for a $5 investment. But really important to that process was the recognition that it potentially could have been by the artist, and then the authentication process. Many times, although there's certain things you can do if you do encounter an artwork, the internet, of course, is in your pocket at all times. You can always look online and see if you can find similar work. But we also invite clients to reach out to us. We're not necessarily going to authenticate everything we see, but certainly we can give some direction at times if somebody has something that appears to be the work of an artist. And if we think that there's a promise of it, then we can often help with going even further and contacting experts in that area.
And I put your skills to the test. Before
Yes.
you sat down today, I sent you a picture of my grandfather, Kent Ross, found a $5 painting at, I don't know if it was a church sale or a garage sale years ago. I believe it's a Verner.
Yeah.
What did you take away from that? And I brought it here to show you too.
So when we looked at it, both Anna and I took a look at it, and it is a Verner. And we know that from our experience with the artist. We've sold probably between us hundreds of works by Verner over the years. So we recognize the style of the work, which is very important. It is a watercolor, which is one of the mediums that he worked in predominantly. The signature is right. The signature looks like his signature. The subject matter, everything I talked about earlier, the subject matter is right. It's a very beautiful landscape, lots of color as well. It's in fantastic condition. It's a painting that is probably at least 100 years old, a watercolor. It's a work on paper, and so many times, and not many, sometimes you'll see his work fades over time, especially if it's in sunlight, direct sunlight. It's in fantastic condition. So for us, based on our experience, we would need to speak to someone else because we know Verner's work well enough. It certainly does appear to be a work by Frederick Verner. And that type of scene can sell for anywhere between $1,000 and $3,000 at auction. And subject matter is a good example here as well, because if that was a scene of an indigenous encampment or if it was buffalo, which he's well known for, it would be more. But a landscape like that and condition also would contribute to the potential of it doing very well at auction, but usually somewhere between that range. But certainly it is a work by Frederick Verner.
This is
very
my
exciting.
Antique Roadshow face.
That's right. Exactly. I'm always happy to deliver good news in these situations.
What are some of the artworks you've encountered on this tour? Were there any that were a surprise to you that you came across?
We were very lucky. Our stop in St. John's, it brought in a work by A.Y. Jackson, a member of the Group of Seven. It was actually a scene of Newfoundland, of the St. John's area, and that painting carried a value from $30,000 to $50,000. We saw some great works by Christopher Pratt as well, including one fantastic watercolor by him that would be somewhere around the $20,000 to $30,000 level as well. It's really exciting because when we travel through different regions of Canada, especially now in Atlantic Canada, you see a lot of the artists that are celebrated in these regions that are from these regions, and New Brunswick and Newfoundland and Nova Scotia and PEI. We have all of these artists who are celebrated internationally and of course nationally, like Chris Pratt and David Blackwood and Mary Pratt, who was born in this province as well. But we see a lot of those works in these regions, as well as works that are celebrated outside of Canada and across the country, such as the Group of Seven, Emily Carr, and so we've been very fortunate on this trip to see lots of fantastic works of art, lots of great examples.
I told you this already. I named my dog after Maud Lewis,
Yes.
And you brought a Maud Lewis.
We did.
Tell us a little bit about some of the works that you brought in and what makes them so valuable.
Absolutely. Well, we can start with the Maud Lewis. So this is actually an earlier work by Maud Lewis. So Maud Lewis became very well known in the mid-1960s when there was a documentary produced about her life. Up to that point, of course, she had been, as we all know, she'd been selling paintings from her very small home in Nova Scotia. And what's amazing about her paintings is that because she was not only a painter but also an attraction, and her work was an attraction in Nova Scotia and in all of Atlantic Canada, you find her paintings all over. So you find them along the eastern seaboard, you find them in Maine, and you find them in Vermont, New York State as well, which is not the same as even the Group of Seven. It's rare to find a lot of work by the Group of Seven in the United States, but Maud Lewis, of course, had this, the universality of her story, and her work is so joyful as well. So this work's a bit earlier. It's signed only Lewis. So that typically tells us that it's a work that's at the latest in the early 1960s, and this work's probably from the 1950s, so it's even a little bit earlier than that. When she became very famous, she started signing with both her first and last name, Maud Lewis, because she'd become famous, and people often want to see the full signature. And so this painting is actually going to be offered in our fall live auction in Toronto on November 27th, and it carries a value between about $25,000 and $35,000. We regularly see her estimates exceeded at this time because she's become so popular over the last 8 years since the movie was released. Like I said, before the movie was released, it wasn't, when I started in the business more than 20 years ago, it wasn't uncommon to see her work sell for under $5,000. And now we've had works, we had a work sell for $90,000 just in the last couple of years. So a very, very excited market, and a lot of collectors are very much drawn to her work. It's amazing, we have collectors who collect Maud Lewis who don't don't collect anything else. That's their only focus. So very exciting to have this painting for the fall season. The next work is a work here beside me. It's a work by David Blackwood, who was of course, born in Newfoundland and lived in Ontario most of his life. So he paints and creates Newfoundland scenes. So a lot of scenes. He was related to his family had connection to the sealing industry, to the shipfaring industry as well. So he creates these incredible works. A lot of darkness to them as well. A lot of showing the might of the sea and the land as well. This is a print. David Blackwood's primarily celebrated as a printmaker, and so this is an etching and aqua tint. So it's a multiple, and so you'd find, I think this is a work that's out of 50, so there's 50 works that exist. This carries a value of between $2,000 and $3,000, and that's coming up in an online auction with us at cowleyabbott.ca. But a very, very popular painter. He just passed away actually in the last 5 years, so a great loss to the Canadian art world. But very much this is typical of what we know him very well for. And in fact, so we did also bring this work of art here by Michael French. Michael French, an Ontario painter. So this actually came to us during the Newfoundland, the St. John's Valuation Day. So, and this is also very typical of his work. Very beautiful landscape by the artist. It's a smaller work. It carries a value of between $1,200 and $1,500. But you find all sizes of his work. We've handled works of art by him that are 10 and 15 feet wide as well. But a highly celebrated painter as well. And so we're delighted to have that for an upcoming online auction at cowleyabbott.ca as well.
Incredible. So, and what is the journey from artworks? If someone, let's say, brings one to you, and you do find that there is a market for it, how does it end up at auction?
So we meet with clients all the time, both in our office in Toronto and during our travels, of course, and also remotely. I mean, we do a lot of our work. The age we're in now, people send us photos, and we use email and telephone, of course, even FaceTime sometimes. We provide a preliminary valuation for the client if it is something that would be appropriate for an online or live auction with us. And then from there, we work through the contract process, and so we provide them with an agreement. Our commissions are all inclusive, and so clients don't pay extra for things like insurance or photography. We make it as easy as possible for the consignor. We hold online auctions every single month, usually 5 or 6 sessions, which is great not only for collectors who are parting with art, but also for new collectors. We were talking a little bit before the segment that it's one of the busiest times we've ever witnessed in the art world in Canada, with so many art auctions happening, especially post-COVID with online auctions. There's so much opportunity for collectors to invest in art right now, and so much art available across Canada. So we do online auctions every month, but then we have major live auctions twice a year. And so, as I said, the Maud Lewis would be featured in that sale. Our last live sale in May was artwork valued up to, I think we sold Lauren Harris for just about $2 million. And so it is more of a focus upon those works of art that command a greater price and have a little bit of higher rarity and importance relative to the other works. But again, our online auctions are every month as well at cowleyabbott.ca.
So it's a great time for Canadian art. Can you give us an overview of just some of the trends you're seeing, what's popular? Obviously, Maud Lewis is one. What are the trends right now? The
trends right now you find overall are quality and rarity. You're finding that you're having a lot of interest in the best of artists' work. Many of our most celebrated artists in Canada were very prolific. They produced a great deal of work. So what you're finding right now is that there's interest across the board, the Group of Seven and Tom Thompson, Emily Carr, Jean-Paul Riopel, Alex Colville. There's a lot of the kind of staple artists that have always been very popular at auction and within galleries. They continue to be, but where you're finding very strong prices are in those works of high rarity. We were very fortunate in the last, between 2022 and 2023, to offer a private collection of 160 historical works of art, one of the greatest collections ever amassed in Canada, from a couple in the Toronto area. Their modestly sized home housed 160 works of art by artists like the Group of Seven, Emily Carr, David Milne, a lot of 19th century painters as well. The quality of that collection, so many of the works had been included in major exhibitions over the last 60 years. They'd also been in many books about the artists. So it really commanded a great deal of attention and very high prices. We set about 30 auction records. The overall sale grossed about $36 million over 3 sales. And that was the highest price ever paid, the highest grossing private collection ever in Canada. I say that because it was really an indication of the quality. It was the quality, the rarity of these works. Most of the works had not been available at auction for decades. And so it set so many records because it really drew out the attention of collectors and really gave an indication to how much quality and rarity plays a role right now in Canada. And so it was quite a quite an exciting time for us, certainly, and we're still seeing that. This past season was the first sale since those sales, and we had very strong prices for very rare works of art, but the market continues to be very strong in Canada. It's great.
What's your advice for someone who's interested in becoming an art collector or is a fledgling art collector and wanting to take the next step?
I mean, I think it's really important to pay a lot of attention to the auction market because it's so active, both online sales and live sales. So even if you're just following it, you don't have to be bidding. Going to auction previews if you can, going to gallery openings and paying attention to different galleries as well that may offer historical work if that's your interest, and post-war Canadian work as well. But really paying attention, you know, we're in an age now that allows you to pay so much attention even through Instagram to see what's being offered at the auction houses across Canada, what's being offered in the galleries, even in the museums, going to museum shows, trying to find what you're interested in. You know, we talk a lot about buying what you like, which sometimes people roll their eyes at because they're looking for a better answer than that, but that has a lot of layers to it. You know, you can kind of go to these exhibitions and see what interests you, and then seek out work by that artist and see if that is what interests you, and read. I mean, there's so many books Canadian art books are cheaper than they've ever been because everybody's downsizing their libraries, but reading about the artists and looking back, even looking at old auction catalogs to see, what the best of those artists are and see if that's what you like. And then when you do invest, when you start out, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to buy works of art that you think you're in love with, and then a few years later, you may find it doesn't quite fit with what you've been collecting since then. But as you move along as a collector, it's important to try to find the work that really speaks to you and try to find the best examples by the artists that interest you as well. So instead of investing in maybe 3 or 4 works that are later works by an artist, taking that money and investing in one work that's prime by the artist. Because what you find is that throughout time, those are the works that hold value and hold interest in the market. And so if you are investing, it is important to buy what you like because not everything is going to increase in value over time. But certainly buying very strong examples because you have a much better opportunity for it holding value and increasing in value over time.
You're an art specialist, but you are specifically a Canadian art specialist. What drew you to Canadian art to make that your focus?
I was very lucky. I managed to, through a job placement, end up at a Toronto auction house about almost 25 years ago. And when that auction house merged with a Canadian fine art auction house, Joyner Fine Art, I was moved into that department. So I was very fortunate to learn from people who were experts in the field and very passionate about what they did as well. And also to have, we're very fortunate in the industry because we get to spend time with these works of art. We're so close to it all the time that we don't take that for granted. It's almost like working in a museum because you're always, not only you're always spending time in researching these works of art, but you're also spending time in collections and getting to see people's collections, even if maybe that collection will never, see the light of day. And so for me, I was very fortunate at that time to then be trained as an auctioneer and to just learn over time. It's art like any industry, you're always learning. And so even these valuation days in our travels, so much of that for us is continuing to learn and talk to people that are, not only collectors, but experts in the field as well. And so yeah, that's what really drew me in, and I really fell in love with it. I was very lucky.
And what is the key to being a great auctioneer? It's obviously something that many of us aspire to be good at, but I feel like so few are.
It's really about rhythm, and it's about being very clear and being very professional. So there's a lot of excitement in the room. It moves very quickly, but keeping a pace that everybody knows what to expect throughout the evening, and also ensuring that every work of art is treated equally. It can be very easy. Sometimes you'll sell a work of art for a huge record, and there's a lot of excitement and applause in the room, but it's important then to not let that overshadow the next artwork, because the person who's selling that artwork is in the room. We've spent months getting ready for the auction, and that artwork deserves the same amount of attention. And so that's really important too. It's really about pacing and providing a uniform experience for each work of art and each collector.
As our lifestyles change and evolve, we're more mobile, homes are smaller. Does that change what's popular too, not just in terms of design, but in terms of size?
Without a doubt. What you're finding right now is that so many smaller works of art are incredibly popular with collectors. And you're absolutely right, Vicki. What's happened over the last 30 years, certainly homes have become smaller, but they've also become open concept. So you have a lot of homes and workspaces now where there used to be walls everywhere, where the main floor of a home, I just moved into a home last year, the main floor there is just one big rectangle, whereas the house used to have probably 4 rooms. It used to have a dining room and a kitchen and then a den. And so you're finding that space is at a premium for collectors on the wall. And so you're finding not only new collectors who are in homes with less space than ever, but also long-term collectors have so much less space because they've been collecting for so long. And so you'll often find that a sketch by a member of the group of 7 sometimes will exceed the value of a larger painting by them because there's more people that have less space than ever before. And sometimes on the other side of that, you'll find sometimes very large paintings, a client will get what is perceived to be a deal because there's less collectors who can fit it in their home. I mean, we have collectors come in sometimes with contemporary works of art, we're literally bringing, measuring tapes to see if it's going to fit in their home. But it's a practical, part of the world. And workplaces are like that too. Law firms and, very large companies that used to buy a lot of the very large artwork, a lot of those office places now in large cities have become open concept. So they'll have cubicles in the middle of the floor and glass around the outside, and it leaves far less room for art than it used to. So you're absolutely right. Very small works of art. Sculptures also become very popular as well because sculpture can fit in spaces that doesn't require a wall.
Do you still see people going at art as an investment piece?
Definitely.
Okay.
Certainly, especially with the private collection, we really saw that the collection we sold over 3 seasons, they were such prime examples by those artists that you had a lot of passionate collectors who love the works of art, but they also recognize that those works of art are going to hold value. So you still do have a lot of collectors in the market who are looking at it as an investment aspect. It's always a good idea, like anything, to get as much education as you can around that, and also to ensure you enjoy it and you really do enjoy the art. The great thing about art versus the stock market is that, when you invest in a work of art, it can hang on your wall. It's something you can enjoy and look at and live with every day. And that's why we say you should enjoy it, because it's amazing how many times someone buys an artwork for investment and you go and they decide to consign it later and it might be in their closet or in storage because it's not something they like. But we are finding that certainly more than ever. And certainly through COVID, we found that people had a real chance to connect and reconnect with the passion of collecting. And it provided an opportunity for them to invest outside of the stock market. And if anything, through COVID and beyond, we found that the art market stayed very strong and, if anything, gained strength. And so in many ways, it became a real focus for investors as well.
Well, we're in the final moments of the show. Any final thoughts on or advice for people who are maybe interested in getting a little bit more involved in the art world here in Canada?
I think it's really important to not feel, it's easy to feel apprehension around the art market if you aren't collecting already. I think what you need to do is find those companies and those individuals, those professionals, where you feel a sense of comfort, that they're not going to pressure you to buy something right away. We do our very best at Cowley Abbott to provide that, to provide guidance to collectors. We would much rather have someone take their time and purchase something 3 years from now than jump in too early and be unhappy with their purchase. Art's meant to be enjoyed, primarily. It's meant to bring joy to our lives, and a sense of culture as well. And so it's really important to find where you're comfortable, and not feel any judgment around it. Trying to find really what you're drawn to first, and then the investment side of it will tend to come with that if you're collecting, what you like, and in areas where you have professionals guiding you. And we provide that for free. I mean, we provide a lot of not only valuation for free, but also a lot of guidance to collectors as well. And again, it's just going to our website at cowleyabbott.ca and reaching out to us, and we'd be more than happy to assist.
Well, thank you so much for coming in today. Please come back anytime you're on an art tour and join us again. I appreciate it so much.
Thank you, Vicki. It was a pleasure to be here.
My guest today has been Rob Cowley, art specialist and president of Cowley Abbott. I'm Vicki Hogarth. Thank you for watching Southwest Magazine.
Southwest Magazine is a news and public affairs production of CHCO Television.